Thank you so much, Carol, and thanks everyone for being here today. I want to take this presentation to make it very informal and conversational, and I'll leave time for questions and discussions in the end. The presentation will mostly focus on these events that I co-organized with a group of people, a group of NGO representatives, academics, indigenous peoples, and traditional communities in Brazil during the Berlin Plus 30 Congress of the International Society of Ethnobiology, also the Brazilian Congress of Ethnobiology and Ethnoecology, and the first World Fair of Social Biodiversity that happened in Belém in August. And then in the second part, I want to discuss some research topics that I have been advancing and then I have been exploring with some colleagues that are related to the rights, human and environmental rights in the Amazon, territorial rights, the defense of territorial rights, and the consultation protocols that have been developed by numerous indigenous peoples now across the Brazilian Amazon, but also in Latin America and other Latin American countries. So we'll get started here. So just a little bit of a background and context. This is an outcome and an activity that kind of resulted or was initiated during our UF Amazon workshop that was held here in Gainesville at the University of Florida. It was led by TCD and many other UF units. Some of you participated in the organization or were present here during this workshop. And as you remember, some of you remember, in the end of the workshop, we formed many groups to discuss common interests and research directions and practical actions towards conservation and development of the Amazon. And one of the groups formed was the Indigenous and Traditional Communities Working Group. And one of the activities that we proposed to develop was exactly this, was participation in the Berlin Plus 30 Congress and Conference. And we co-organizing some events and activities together, and it just happened. So this is also a result, a kind of a returning results to this community after that workshop. And also it has a direct relationship with some of the activities and research directions we took and are taking within the Amazon Dams Network, the Rede de Barragens Amazônicas, an international network that's focused on the socio-ecological impacts of hydroelectric power plants across the Amazon. Maybe some of you are familiar with this, and some of you are involved in this network as well. And specifically, we had a project that was funded by the University of Florida Biodiversity Institute and was led by TCD, in which Betty was the PI, and we worked also across campus in collaboration with the law school and other departments. And it was focused on indigenous traditional people's rights in the Amazon. We had a post-workshop after the UF Amazon workshop. We had a post-workshop, when you're already tired, you still have another event because you're very ambitious. You want to accomplish a lot. And, of course, take advantage of all these incredible people that were here on campus, sharing their experiences, sharing their practices with us. So we promoted this post-workshop symposium on indigenous rights, and we brought Joênia Wapichana. She's the first Brazilian lawyer, indigenous woman lawyer in Brazil, that defended the rights of the Raposa Serra do Sol. It's a very iconic example for Brazil in terms of demarcation of indigenous lands on the Supreme Court of Brazil. And then after the symposium, we took her to meet with the Seminoles group in the South Florida, and it was amazing. She got some gifts, and they played the piano for her, and it was really, really beautiful to have that, be able to promote that encounter. So then, deriving from all these previous engagements, also in this conference, we had the presence of lawyers from the Brazilian Prosecution Service. Viratan Caseta, he was here with us, and he's also a partner in this activities. He was supposed to be in Belém with us, but he couldn't because he had a court defense that couldn't postpone so. he couldn't come at that time. So I just wanted to mention that this is a collective effort. This is the opening of the conference, and by the opening of the conference, by this committee that you can already see how much indigenous peoples not only participated, but led activities and led manifestations, promoted manifestations during the Congress, and this was really remarkable to me to see that self-determination, to see indigenous peoples also speaking for themselves and being able to be part of that conference and not just as spectators in the audience or passive spectators, but also as active participants. And so this was a pre-Congress activity, the workshop. It was a collective effort in which numerous organizations participated, and it was supported by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. I think this also has a direct relationship with the project that now we are initiating here, the Amazon Infrastructure Governance, Pan-Amazonia community of practice on governance across the Amazon, because it's related to the tools that are used for the protection of indigenous lands and the defense of indigenous and environmental rights. So I wanted to just play, just before I start, I hope this works really. I wanted to play, so this is the workshop website that we prepared, and it has many materials if you want to explore. It has presentations and videos. All the collection of materials that were produced are here. But I wanted to play this very short video so you can have an idea of what this event was about. And it has English caption. Just highlighting this collective effort in which every organization that was participating and also bringing indigenous representatives from very distant places of the Amazon, remote areas of the Amazon, put their resources also to make this possible. So everybody contributed with a little bit of funding, a little bit of resources and work. That is the most precious work and time. That's a precious resource we have. So with this workshop, we wanted to facilitate the exchange of experiences, the collective learning and political strengthening of networks and collectives for improved territorial management and conservation of indigenous lands, protected areas, and areas occupied by quilombolas and other traditional communities in the Amazon. It was a multi-stakeholder collective effort, as I mentioned. It was also an opportunity for indigenous peoples and traditional communities to share their experience using these tools, technological and juridical tools. What are the connections? What are the drawbacks? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities for the use of these tools? So some of the questions we asked. As well as in this processes of resistance, juridical incidents, and the exercise of the right to free, prior, and informed consent to the construction and use of their consultation protocols. The format and tools that we used in the workshop, we had organized activities co-organized with some indigenous leaders, not all of them because it's really challenging. But for example, Alexandra Munduruku, who is very active in the WhatsApp, in the cell phones, and other Cândido and other leaders helped us to think about what are the activities, how these activities should be shaped, and also they helped to organize and to lead the activities during the event as well. And we had a bunch of tools such as generative teams and questions, participatory mapping, the carousel, also called merry-go-round, that we use for the experiences fair, graphic facilitation, video documentation, panels, and guided discussion. We had 128 people. It was really a challenge because when I got there at Naya, the place we had the event in the Federal University of Pará, it was a very small auditory, and the chairs wouldn't move. And I got there 3 days before, and I was like, oh my God, I was like pulling my hair, like what I'm gonna do. I was super stressed out. And then we found out there was like a second level, like a bunch of rooms that we could use, and the Naya people were really helpful, really nice, and it made it like possible. It was like hot in the second floor because we didn't have AC. So it's like, that's how you should exist in the Amazon, like feel the heat, right? And so we kind of made it happen. It was really packed, like people were just waiting outside, and but you know that was it. It was a little bit of improvisation as well. But what was remarkable to me was that we were able to bring 40 indigenous people in the same event to share. And also in the Congress as a whole, there were more like 1,500 people as a total, and like from these, probably 30 or 40% were indigenous peoples or traditional communities. In the opening of the event, of the workshop, we were talking about indigenous peoples. We had it more like, you know, it's easy to just talk because it's shorter, but then there were these two women from the Abacatao Quilombola community, the Afro-descendant communities, traditional communities that live actually in the urban area of Belém, and they have a bunch of challenges that people that live in more like rural areas do not face, like mining, pollution, you name it. They have like a lot of problems in that more kind of urban area. And they said, we also are tribal peoples. We also have the right to be consulted. We also should be named in this conference. And then in the declaration, they make sure we put traditional quilombolas and other traditional communities. So it's really complex because this concept of traditional community is a very problematic concept that you know, non-indigenous make up to be able to, you know, to rule and to govern the environment. But it was like this tension. So it's like, of course, you're completely welcome here. So then they were like an integral part of the workshop, and they also shared their consultation protocols, which was not in the initial plan. So that was a kind of a nice surprise as well, to bring us to the need to recognize the indigenous, traditionals, and tribal peoples' rights, people that really have their lives in close connection and interdependence with the environment. So we started with this participatory peoples map. It was an activity that both facilitated the introduction and people to get familiarized with each other and present themselves, introduce themselves, and also to kind of understand, to have like a very broad view, a pan-Amazonian view of, like, I would call it like an Amazon drone view, like from up, of the problems, threats, and fights that the peoples are facing and fighting in their lands, and also to see the connections, possible connections, and similar threats or similar fights that people are fighting and address these problems. Alessandra was co-leading this activity, and we are also used, so we had these three questions: where do you live, what are the threats to our lands, and what are our fights? So just these three questions that we to lead the participatory mapping. So the Pan-Amazonian vision, as we wanted to promote here, we only have 3 representatives from Peru. We didn't have from any other Amazonian countries, but I think this is an example that can be applied in other situations and other countries as well. And Carla Gilasio, she is our collaborator in many projects. She's from the Cortesia Collective, and she is a graphic facilitator. So she did the facilitation. Also, she did the facilitation of our an event of Amazon Dams Network we had in Palmas earlier on. And so she did all these like symbols, and then the indigenous people would choose what are the threats to your lands. We had some already that people said previously, but also others emerged, and she was doing as they emerge. So as other threats will appear, for example, the quilombolas have many others that we didn't even imagine. So then they were added to the map, and it was adaptive. Like threats to the cultural identity. We had the dams here, is gold mining. You can see the little gold plaques, and illegal logging, pollution, invasions, and other threats. I just wanted to go back and then we reflected that all of these lands are really different, and they have different threats, but they are connected through the livelihoods that they have, the struggles, the rivers, and the strategies, some of the strategies that they use. The next activity was the Experiences Exchange Fair, and that was on the second floor. It was after the break. So we all went upstairs, and it was kind of a little bit of a mess in the beginning because we kind of figure out what we're going to do. All these people, we planned for 40, we have 80, we have 128. What are we going to do now? But kind of in the end worked because we divided the group in two groups. We divided the audience in two groups. And one was like in this room and the other was in another space. So we had kind of stations. And we say like the Experiences Fair, we have stations where every group or indigenous group or the quilombolas or people that came from Gaia in Colombia to share the experiences as well that they are developing. I forgot to mention Colombia, but there was no indigenous or traditional people to represent it, just the director of Gaia was there. And so we separated, and then they had, like, we did this carousel where everybody explained to everybody what they're doing, and you're going like rotating, and then the same group go to the other, they swap, and then the other group goes to the other space, and the people present again the experience. It was very interesting, and it was kind of going down from that Pan-Amazonian drone view to more like a regional view. What are the tools, how they're being used, and then the panels kind of provided that more detail into the local experiences and the local context that where these tools were applied and developed. There was the Alert Indigenous Climate, and so my platform that have been developed by IPAM and used by indigenous peoples in the Raposa Serra do Sol and the Kayapó Metuchiri land. The Proteja Amazônia is a platform, is a collective that unites indigenous peoples, settlers, riverine communities in the Teles Pires River area. The AIDA Americas promoted that, brought that experience of defense, human rights defense on an international level. They just have a lawsuit against the Belo Monte Dam that they promoted and is filed with the International Court of Human Rights. And so they played an important role as well as connecting those skills. The Canoe Initiative of the Gaia Foundation, the Indigenous Monitoring Agents Network of the Upper Rio Negro, the life plans, the territorial management plans are developed by the YMP. They are like, I was really impressed by the YMP. I wanted to bring them. They are incredible. Like what they are doing in the self-determination and control of their land against all these threats, and especially mining, that's a huge problem there. And the territorial self-demarcation, the Mukuduruku, was also remarkable. The map of life and consultation protocol. So I brought some materials. This mostly consultation protocols, but this is the Mapa da Vida that was done by the Munduruku indigenous communities, and it was the self-demarcation. And the other day I was participating in an event by ANEL, the National Agency for Electricity Regulation in Brazil, about participatory inventories and the needs to promote the participation. And they presented maps, but you don't see anything with those maps. You just see you see the land, you see deforestation, you don't see the people, you don't see you can even, you see the lands, but you don't see what is kind of the people's perspectives on these lands. And this, to me, was like, I want to see a map like this. I want to see this. I want to see what are the sacred areas. I want to see what are the garden fields and things like that, and the sacred areas, the sacred spots were really highlighted during this conference because some of them are outside the demarcated lands, and this is a huge problem for them. So I just want to pass this around, the Mapa da Vida. Take a look. And they did this because the plans of building a cascade of hydropower plants across the Tapajós Basin. So the Munduruku developed these tools, the self-demarcation, the consultation protocol to protect their rights against the Tapajós development plans. They're not only dams, hydro port, you name it, dams, small dams already there. So the Tapajós kind of been frontier for hydropower development in the Amazon. And it's problematic because it's a very poor society participation in this decision-making plans, and the benefits are questioned, and the costs are unknown, and the risks. So, so these are some of the, you can see some of the aspects. We also built these sheets to collect and summarize the information, so easy to report after too, that Carla prepared for each station, had those kind of the questions and some of the findings and the challenges. And one thing that we found as well was like people were sharing the experiences and the learning using these tools, but not so much the challenges. So we wanted to highlight also what are the challenges, and so we kind of had more guided discussions towards, you know, highlighting challenges also. Alessandra, here is Alessandra and Ana. They are both also founders and leaders of the Munduruku Women's Association. That's very strong leadership of women leadership, both in the Congress and also in the event. It's really interesting to see. And the way she speaks strong. We'll talk to the government. Oh, no fear. I talk to the big man, a big woman. So the first panel was the technological tools. And so, you know, after the experiences there, they shared in more detail. They presented the app, is a cell phone app that they use, basically to record and to maybe denounce if there is like any invasion in the land, heat spots, maybe fire threats, a fire that are very now with the climate change, what's going on there, fire is becoming a very, very common threat, and especially in the dry season for indigenous land, indigenous territories, and also hydric scarcity stress, hydric stress, like just drought, also is a problem. If they have like if they see mortality of invasions or dead animals. So all these things that happen on a daily basis that they are able to monitor and to record with their cell phones, and then make a decision on how to use this information. And this was shared by Genis Van Melchior and Roiti and Coco Crorici, Kayapó. Also, I think it's important in these events, and as we carry out work, research, engagement with indigenous peoples and traditional communities, to name them. They have a name, right? And it's not just the people's name. Why then we are not also called by our people name? What is our people name? The no-indigenous. I know indigenous, right? I have a name. So it was kind of, we really wanted to also highlight in the reports and everything who presented. They were there presenting these experiences. They're authors of, you know, using the tools, and the Proteja was a tool that was really developed with his being really still very in experimental stages, developed with the Munduruku. Participatory environmental and climate monitoring. So the Proteja is interesting because it's both a technological and a juridical tool. The Proteja, the idea of the Proteja is that you have the information, for example, of the violation of human rights, or even threats like to security, to self, like conflicts or threats to your own security. You can then report it through your cell phone to the designated instances. For example, the Federal Prosecution Service, or whoever you want to make that announce. At least you can do it more easy, or in a more direct way, instead of like having to go to the city or use a radio or something like that. So it's a tool that will help that too, that juridical incidents. The participatory environmental and climate monitoring, the Rio Negro Basin, that's carried out with support from ISA. Some of these were also supported by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. So the Moore Foundation also wanted to bring the partners and the people that are using these tools in order to share these tools in the event. So that was the idea also behind why these tools are selected and not others. Why these communities are not others, right? Participatory Environmental Climate Monitoring was very interesting as well. And then the Xingu Plus Network Platform, which is really an observatory. And that was shared by Viviane. She's a lawyer in ISA. She's really credible. And she presented that Xingu Plus Network Platform. So different formats with different purposes. So some of the findings and highlights of this first panel were like that the app does not resolve the problem, but helps as a tool to monitor the land by Janice Van. We have to decide about how we will send and share the information. For now, it's only on the cell phones. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. The Proteja, the highlight was the collaborative aspect in the creation of the platform, which is also a difficulty because it takes time and cost, effort, and you need probably additional funding to do that. It's not all in the lab. The lab is there as well. Means to publicizing the impacts of the dam, or Telespires Dam, such as that of animals and fish, and sending directly to the Federal Prosecution Service. Also, Cândido and the Munduruku in the Telespires have witnessed the death of turtles and alligators that they never seen before. In the Rio Negro, they are integrating strategies and tools. And they are also integrating traditional knowledge with the technological tools. So they use tablets, for example, to monitor changes in the seasonal changes and things that are changing, for example, with climate, including the constellations of stars and markers, like natural markers or species that will mark the transition from one season to the other and now are changing, like the blooming of some trees and things like that. So integrating that with the use of the tablets and being able to report. And the Xingu Plus Observatory is, well, according to Viviane, they did this to not get completely crazy with like a lot of information, a lot of documents that didn't have like a repository, a place holder, both to host all this collection of documents and lawsuits and photos and materials, but also to share. So that's how the Xingu Plus Observatory has been used. And they also have a very interesting map of environmental conflict that showed what is not shown normally in the maps. The common concern that we found is the preoccupation of information breach and security of this information. What this information is going to be used for? Who can control the use of information? It's out there in the internet. Everybody knows about you, what you did, even what you ate, if you put it in Facebook, right? Nowadays, everything's kind of open and public, and that's a preoccupation they have because they don't want that data to be out there. And Janice Van said, for now, is in our cell phones. We don't want it to be like out there in a platform. Even if it's like we trust IPAN, but who knows? We don't trust other people's, and they don't want this information shared. Especially, for example, if there's an invasion and they put it in the social media, and then the invasion, guess what? They know they're publicizing it. They go there maybe and can track them or have some conflict. So they don't want to do that. And data sovereignty is an area that I think we should all be more concerned when we work with local, indigenous, traditional communities, that who owns all this data that is collected in this research? It's you. It's in my hard drive. So it's mine. And I don't share with you, right? Because I'm the author. So all this authorship is really conflicting with the indigenous values and the ways that knowledge is produced and shared. So, and I don't see an easy way to solve these conflicts, but I think we all should reflect on these problems together and learn from some of the peoples that are developing tools for data sovereignty, like people in the Colorado watershed that we learned during another workshop that we had there from the Navajo. They have a project there. So this is a panel on the first panel, graphic facilitation panel of the first discussion panel we had that summarized the main findings, the main themes that were discussed. And it's kind of a nice visual tool also for indigenous traditional communities and just indigenous peoples that can share back in their villages and explain what was developed during the workshop. Now I will transition a little bit to the second part of the presentation, and I'm going to talk about a research area, a research topic that we have been developing in the context of the Amazon Dams Network project, one of the projects we had collaboration with Federal University of Tocantins and Unimid here, but also kind of from there emerged this need also to focus on social and environmental justice and human and environmental rights. And from there, we have been developing this topic in a group with, some products, some thoughts, reflections, and working on some publications on academic publications as well. And so I kind of wanted to position myself in a very preliminary way, because this is really under construction. There is the day has only 24 hours, and maybe 6 or 7 of those you should be spending sleeping, and then there is the other, that is for you to read and write and do your research and do all that. So, I'm still in the beginning stages of kind of developing how would look to this problem from my own disciplinary perspective and others' disciplinary perspectives. And so I'm kind of connecting environmental anthropology, social environmental justice, and political ecology in this framework academically. And then looking at its co-shaping and co-evolution of people, culture, and nature, epistemic pluralism, the different ways of understanding, relating, and making decisions about the world that comes from environmental anthropology, social environmental justice. The rights of people and nature interconnected was very strong to me in this conference. And some of the kind of very simple statements by indigenous peoples. Who will consult the jaguar? Who will consult the armadillo? It really makes me think strongly about the rights of peoples and nature connected. And it shouldn't be dissociated, it should be connected. And it's stronger when it's connected. The juridical pluralism, or the specific ways that indigenous people, traditional communities, and other, differentiated cultures have to make decisions about their land, about the environment, how they make these decisions, how they unite as a group, they're a collective. What are their languages related to this? I mean, probably a lot. A lot of the concepts are embedded in the languages that we don't understand. Right, so that's why the pluralism as well. And epistemic justice, which is the justice to your own knowledge system, the justice that your knowledge system is recognized as such and is respected as a different knowledge system and valid as well in terms of the decision making. And then political ecology comes with looking at the political and power relations shaping environmental and society configurations and outcomes, using some authors that look at emerging political spaces that both metaphorically and geographically, such as Joel presented in his last talk that I went. And what's that concept that he brought? I think that's interesting applies for the liminal. Liminal. I can talk a little bit about that after the presentation. So some of the sources and mandatory nature of the right to consultation come from instruments that are now already implemented and ratified in a bunch of countries, and they do not exist by chance. They come from a very paternalistic and a very assimilationist politics, international politics, to more pluralistic and democratic approaches to decision-making and governance, such as the ILO Convention of the International Labour Organization of 1969, was ratified and promulgated in Brazil since 2004, and different for many different Latin American countries. Here in the United States, it's not this convention, but there are other conventions that apply. There are other rules and laws for the right to be consulted, and the right to autonomy comes even since since the ancient Greece. Autonomy was one of the fundamental rights. My autonomy, I have the right to be myself. So kind of this right of self-determination comes from its fundamental rights as well. Then you need to go and study law to understand. The human rights instrument, it's normative and supralegal, so it's really strong. Because also in the Constitution of 1998, the Brazilian Constitution, there are articles that also protect indigenous and traditional communities that are recognized as such in Brazil. They are trying to cancel that, are trying to destroy this right, and just now there are bills in the Congress that have been voted about not considering traditional communities in the same category as indigenous peoples. But still, it's valid, and it's very strong when it's put together with the Constitution. The United Nations Declarations of the Rights of Indigenous and Tribal Peoples that also protects not only indigenous but any people that's considered tribal and is self-recognized as such and live in a collective and have their own like cultural practices, orientations, relationship with the land and the resources, and the American Convention of Human Rights. So there are not lack of instruments to protect the right to be consulted. So in the second panel, so I'm just transitioning to what happened in the panel that also is informing this research, and the research informing also how we look to these questions, how we look to this problem, how we understand it. Key questions. So the consultation protocols, they started this movement that people began to elaborate the consultation protocols because there is this liminality.
Yeah, that's liminality.
There's this liminality going on, which is to regulate or not to regulate. That's the question. And it's a danger in not regulating, and it's a very, very huge danger in regulating right now. Because we have an oppressive state that we have that is dominated by vested and interest, political, economic interest of a group. That's promoting the agribusiness as the solution for the country, and just invading indigenous lands, territories for planting soy and raising cattle and things like that. The view of this capitalist society is in shock. It's confronting with indigenous peoples and traditional peoples' community livelihoods and way of living and worldviews. So then they said, well, if you don't implement the law, regulate the law, and you say you don't need to consult me because the law is not regulated, I'm going to implement the law, and I'll develop my own law. And so that's what this consultation protocol is about. Very interesting, also problematic. So how is a decision made by the given people or community? Who speaks for the people, right? So the YMP were the first group in Brazil that developed the consultation protocol. They have a little song. I can show you if you have a time that's kind of very interesting. It's a song about the protocol in their own language that they share during the workshop. And it shows like the importance of self-determination. It's not only the protocol. It's not a physical. It's not a piece of paper. It's the whole process of constructing it, talking with the community, collective meetings and decisions, and how we're going to do this together, how we're going to take care of our land, of our people, of our children, of the elderly, women. And so that was kind of one interesting aspect, that this is the YMP. And each one is different from the other, so I can pass that around, and you can take a look. So information about the people, social organization. They also explain that they don't have a one chief. They have many different like chiefdoms, and they make these decisions like collectively. So it doesn't work for them to have one chief or one person or even few persons talking for the community. It has to be like with the lands, and the decisions need to be made that way. And they are now using the protocol to consult with the government in this settlement that they want to build around their lands. So they are already using the protocol. The second was the Abacatau Quilombola Community Consultation Protocol. These women that said, we are here, come on, we are Quilombolas. We want to share a protocol. And it was the first Quilombola protocol developed in Brazil. And it was so interesting because they say, first women, then elderly, then children, and then the men. They have 13 groups, subgroups, social subgroups that need to be respected in the consultation process. And there are 9 women and 1 man in the council of the Quilombola Association. So they're very strong women, let me tell you. The Juruna Yuja people of the Xingu Big Bend, a river that were affected by the Belo Monte Dam, also shared a protocol. They were impacted by the Belo Monte Dam in the Xingu River. And they recently, it was like a very emblematic lawsuit that was filed by the Public Prosecution Service that the Belo Monte Mining Company wanted to establish their mining fields in this area that's gonna already impacted by the Belo Monte Dam and the Belo Sun. They both are so beautiful, no? The Belo, like, is beautiful. So the Belo Monte and the Belo Sun together, imagine the cumulative impacts. So then it was used to postpone or cancel temporarily the license for the previous license for the Belo Sun mining company because of the protocol. And the judge, and he put the protocol in front of the judge and said, this is valid or not? The Giliardi is very strong. This is valid or not, judge? And the judge said, it's valid. And the lawsuit was filed, and because of the protocol, even FUNAI cannot speak on behalf of them. They said that the only group can speak on behalf of them are themselves. They kind of got empowered in the process as well. And they say the right to consultation exists regardless of protocols, not because, so now everybody needs to have protocol. Oh my God. So, you know, every single group. And then there was a big discussion in the end about like, so now, what we do? So who will consult the armadillo? The jaguar also was a highlight. And Ademir Kabamundurko also said, if the government does not give up the Tapajós complex, we cannot know. We can resist for more 500 years. We will resist for more 500 years. This is just kind of a framework to look at the right of self-determination, participation, the duty to consult, because it's kind of a rights-based approach, the rights holders and the duty bearers. So there is that also approach to juridical approach. So all the lawsuits, all the bills that were already filed in Brazil say that the right to consultation should be respected. Some consultation protocols that were already developed in Brazil, and I know there are other Latin American countries that have also consultation protocols. Each one is different from the other, and some of them were developed also articulated or connected to the management plan, which is really interesting because you can then determine how decisions are going to be made to the use of the territory, ecotourism group or company, how we're going to decide about that. So things like that, like just basic decision making, we can use that. So some of the pros and cons of consultation protocol: pros, legal pluralism, the local decision-making systems and promoting that, respecting them, empowerment and social control, interconnection with territorial management, and we saw these tools can be connected. That was really interesting in the end with that reflection. Potentially minimizes conflicts, values indigenous languages and cultural practices, but also kind of the cons, they are costly and time-consuming. They can be a mechanism of oppression as well. And they can be manipulated. Oh, we are respecting this, so we can build the mind right here. We can build the dam, we respect the protocol, right? And so it can be manipulated as well. It can weaken trans-regional and national social movement because each group has their own decision-making process, then how you do it over a broader region, how you connect with other people that are facing the same challenge. And do all people in community have to have their own protocol? That's my question again. This is the graphic panel that was developed by Carla. Carla did that to summarize all the discussions around the protocols and the groups that share the protocols. And another interesting thing that Alessandra shared and they needed from Duruku, they said that the company sent the researchers, an anthropologist, biologists go there, Jasmine go there, so nice. no, you cannot enter here. You're not going to develop any research. So they are blocking researchers to get into the lands, so they cannot do any research that is going to be done for the environmental impact assessment before they are consulted. So they don't know what's going on. So even like the interesting thing about this policy, this instrument, is that even if even for example, basic environmental mitigation plans, they should be consulted. Because of mitigation plan, even for education, intercultural education schools, they should be consulted according to the law. So that's interesting. Highlights and conclusion in general. I think the women's leadership and participation in the Congress as a whole. Tuira Kayapó, this Kayapó women that showed a machete to the Eletrobras engineer during the development in the 70s was there. She's a little older, still strong. She got an award in the end of the Congress, and so it was super beautiful getting this award. Indigenous and traditional peoples alliances, so they were strengthened. Threats to land, human rights, human environmental rights, personal and collective, and safety across the Amazon and Latin America were highlighted, both legal and illegal. Increased violence, conflicts, and fight over lands and resources that are going on. They connected and indissociable nature of rights of people and nature, recognition of the value of social biodiversity. They pledged for respect and protection of sacred sites, decriminalization of indigenous traditional peoples' strategies and practices. They're all in declaration plus 30 Belém declarations that were now rewritten after the 88. And from the workshop, we included statement was reviewed with the indigenous and traditional peoples. I have to say now, indigenous traditional all the time, I say only indigenous, I feel bad because I remember she saying, there we have to be also mentioned. Must respect the right to free, prior, informed consultation and consent in relation to actions or projects that might affect the territories, sacred sites and ways of life. So we put it sacred sites. And we also highlighted the right to say no and the need to respect protocols or the traditional ways of consulting. So not just because you don't have a protocol, you don't have the right to consult according to your own practices and systems. So just wanted to acknowledge all these institutions that contributed for this event and also the people, Juarez Pizzucci and Glenn Shepard, Marion, and Naya, people that were really helpful for the event to be such a successful event. Thank you very much, and yes, we have time for some questions.